105, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Mrs. Pecky, if you can call roll, please.
Mr. Seeger? Oh, Mr. Seeger's got to have his mic on.
There you go.
There he is.
All right. Here.
Mr. Seeger. Mr. Forbes.
Here.
Mr. Scheller.
Here.
Mrs. Petke here. Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mrs. Johnson.
Here. Dr. Opper, can you verify publication of meeting?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. All right, new business. Item A, consider middle school, high school referendum-related asphalt replacement plan. Mr. McGregor, you have some information to provide to us on that. You are currently muted, Mr. McGregor. I don't know if you're trying to speak or not, or if Mackenzie's going to take the lead, but both of you happen to be on mute.
It's Control D if you want to unmute.
There we go. Now can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Sorry about that. I will start presenting, and you should be able to see. All right, so is everybody able to see the site plan of the high school on their screen right now?
Yes.
No, I'm still seeing you.
Oh. So I have, and that probably didn't help anything because right now there's a number of pictures up of the existing asphalt. That probably didn't change anything for you, Dr. Opper.
Nope, I can still see you.
I can see a plans that's being.
Me too.
Sure.
And I.
Yeah.
Oh, you all can?
Yeah.
Yeah, we all can
Yes.
see the
Yes,
screen.
we can all see it.
Yep.
Would you like me to get started, Dr. Opper, and walk through it?
Sure, you go ahead. I don't know why I can't see what everybody's looking at. I may log out and log back in again just to try it.
So what I have up right now, the areas that are shown in dark up here in the upper left-hand corner out on 4th Street, the area coming along the front of the new fitness center, as well as the small area right here. That is the areas we have identified in the base bid as far as asphalt patching. And a lot of it was just where we needed to connect into the existing sanitary or storm systems around the building for the new additions. One thing we had been looking at and we had kind of budgeted for early on in the project was there is some deteriorating asphalt around the high school that probably should be looked at and investigated further as far as being replaced and when that would take place. So one item that we are having come up here in the very, very near future is the sanitary system trenching that's going to be taking place on the back side of the high school, on the south side of the high school. Lost my cursor, but we do have this asphalt drive back here. There's going to be an 8-foot wide trench cut in that driveway in this location, and then brought up to the school into the band room, and then as well as tech ed. So as we were looking at this, we kind of figured now would be the time to have further conversations regarding a larger asphalt replacement project. And with that, we just kind of wanted to talk through the overall scope, the overall dollars that we have put together for it, and kind of get some conversation started revolving around when that would take place. So what we had them do, the contractors, Falks Brothers, our excavator, as well as American Asphalt, our asphalt contractor, and Delrar, our concrete contractor, has put together a proposal. The base scope proposal is shown in green on the screen, which is kind of the front loop of the building. And with that, we have pull this over as well. So the front loop of the building, as I have shown on here, hopefully everybody can see it. Move that over so you can see the number. So for the demolition, the new stone base, asphalt paving, Mackenzie went through the site and we identified about 160 lineal feet of curb in that front area that is kind of deteriorated, falling apart, not in great shape. So we had the contractor quote removing and replacing that. And then we have an allowance for some topsoil and seeding along the edge of the pavement and curb and gutter that would need to be touched up as well. So just that front loop alone, we're looking at right around $177,000 for that to, and this number is completely removing all the base, providing all new stone base, new asphalt pavement, patching the curb and gutter that is damaged and needs repair, and then, like I said, some topsoil and seeding around the edges where needed. Mainly those areas that be needed would be where we are removing and replacing the curb and gutter. So that is the area that we had identified here in green. So coming from 4th Street up to the bus turnaround in the front of the high school, middle school, and then back out to 4th Street again. The second area we had looked at is the area in pink, which basically starts at the new parking lot on the east side of the school and then runs around the back side of the building beyond Tech Ed and over to the existing ticket booth. So the reason why we kind of wanted to talk about this was from a scheduling standpoint, we're going to be cutting that asphalt up and installing that sanitary lateral here that work will be started probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks of getting that work put in place. So now is the time to kind of decide, would the district want to spend the money for the patch in this area once we put the sanitary lateral in, or do we want to look at more long-term down the road? And what I had talked with Dr. Opper about is this paving project may not be something we want to bite off all of it this summer from a schedule and a dollar standpoint, and look at pushing this into the summer of 2021 for a larger asphalt replacement project. Because the back portion, I didn't walk through it, but the back portion is just a little bit less expensive than the front at $152,000, but still altogether we're looking at about 330. It was 300. Yeah, just shy of 330,000, 329 and change. Right now, the money that I had set aside for asphalt patching and repair at the high school was $125,000 that I had set aside in the budget. So not quite enough to cover all of it. It would be enough to cover some of it, but that is a pretty large contingency expenditure with still July and August yet to come. And I know Dr. Opper can vouch for, we had another contingency expenditure that'll be coming up here that cropped itself up today with some more underground plumbing piping in the science rooms that is in pretty rough shape. So we're in the process of investigating that in the coming days and getting numbers put together for that. But that's all the reason why we want to make sure we're holding on to this contingency, so we have that available as these items come up. I do have some pictures that Mackenzie had taken today. I can kind of walk through them and kind of show you some of the different areas. So this is the drive. Basically, we're standing at our construction fence on the west side. It'd be the northwest side of the high school, looking out towards 4th Street. So right where the barrel is here, we connected into this storm system, and there is a patch, an asphalt patch that needs to take place at this area. But for the most part, this drive is in decent shape. But as you get closer to 4th Street, there is an area right here that is starting to crack and settle a little bit. So there would be some need of some work done in that location, if not a whole scale replacement like we had talked about. A lot of times when you have areas like this that start to get damaged in a specific area, it's kind of a sign that there may be an issue with the base below. This is the driveway on the northeast side of the school, facing 4th Street. As you can see, there's some a little bit more cracking occurring on this driveway, and some of it has already been patched or crack filled in the past. And here's a look from 4th Street back up towards the school. So a little bit more cracking occurring on the eastern drive as we head back towards the school and up along the 95 addition for the library media center, as well as the art area. This area back through here, you start seeing a lot more cracking, a lot more settlement, especially around some of the drainage, the storm drainage in the center of the park and the center of the driveway. So flipping through these pictures, as you can see right here, an area of deterioration where the asphalt is actually broke up. Continuing further down the drive, this corner, you can see the term they use for this a lot is alligatoring, where it kind of has that scaling look, and definitely it's typically a sign of an issue with the base below. And then this is a picture coming around the southeast corner. Again, some issue with the asphalt along the storm catch basin and kind of right in that drainage line. A few more pictures a little bit closer up of that drainage line, looking back at that catch basin. And then this is looking down the driveway towards past the football field and towards the ticket booth. The further you get towards the ticket booth, I guess the driveway looks a little bit more decent. Not as much wear and tear on the driveway, but this area is where we are going to be starting to bring our sanitary lateral, basically from this curb line here out 8 feet. We'll be cutting that area to bring the new sanitary line in, both to the band room just on the other side of this dumpster, and then to Tech Ed, basically where this photo is taken. They'll be turning to the right and going into the high school. So it's a common problem. Asphalt is only good for so long, and it's only as good as the base underneath it. So there's definitely some areas of concern as you go around the parking lot. And really today was just kind of to start the conversation and get a feel for what the board and the district would like to do with this asphalt. If they're looking, hey, let's make some patches and stay more on the low end of that cost, and just make do, or do we want to look at let's wait and see what we have left with contingency dollars at the end of the project and get a larger scale asphalt replacement project moving forward, probably in the spring, summer of 2021, once the students are gone.
One of the things you had mentioned, Matt, was in the back of the building, that 8-foot span would roughly, to fill it back in, will be about $14,000. So one of the reasons we wanted to have you think about whether or not you want to do an asphalt project with some of the remaining dollars is because we could just leave that as a compacted gravel base for the winter until next spring when you do the blacktop. Otherwise, you'd be putting down $14,000 worth of material and potentially digging it all back up again.
Correct.
So trying to be prudent with the use of the money. You do the $14,000 worth of work if you don't think you're going to do any driveway work.
If you put this off till next spring, how is that paid for? So referendum money, or we have to, it comes out of the next budget cycle?
It would, contingency dollars that are left over out of referendum, Bruce, would go to fund this project. Because you're able to spend money from the referendum for, I believe it's 3 fiscal years. So it would still come out of the referendum fund.
And if the contingency is down to like 50,000 or 100,000, then what goes on then?
Then it would be using the dollars remaining at the discretion of the district. If they decide to just take and patch certain areas of asphalt and not others, that would kind of be at your discretion. Or if there's other projects around the school, handrails going into the lower level, it just cropped into my brain. If that project had a stronger feeling to proceed with over the asphalt pavement. My only concern with allocating those dollars, that $330,000 now, is that money is committed and that project will start, and those funds would not be available if we would run into any other issues with the, I'd call it the base scope of work at the high school or the elementary school. The other piece of this that is definitely a possibility, and those numbers that I shared, those are just the numbers I received from contractors. As we all know from the elementary school, we did have some poor soils over there. There is a chance of running into poor soils here. The new additional parking lot that we had put in on the east side of the school, after we cut that to subgrade and did a proof roll on it, that passed really well. And we did not have to do any undercutting there. But with any excavation project like this, there's always that as a potential. So if and when this project does move forward, I would probably suggest we add a line item on this for some contingency dollars to pick up some of those potential poor soils.
I guess I like the thought of waiting to see what we got left, personally.
Would you suggest then to Matt that you want the compacted gravel, but don't put the blacktop in, and hold on that until we know a little bit more, maybe in a month or two?
That's my personal feeling. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but that's what I like.
You mean have the compacted gravel all the way around the front, that big horseshoe?
No, I think that's just in the back, right?
Just in the back where the sanitary is.
Yeah, just where that.
And if there is a potential to pave a larger scope, we would probably ask about this small section right here on the main bus loop as well. because that would be an area that if the main bus loop, or on this drawing, the area in green, gets repaved, that area would be pulled up and paved a second time.
Okay.
And if it is something that, say we get to the month of August, and midway through August, towards the end of August, and we're really feeling comfortable where we're at, or excuse me, let me take a step back. We get to August, and like Mr. Scheller had mentioned, there's not enough funds to complete the whole project, and the district decides, let's just do the patching that we need to get by. That work can, especially around the back of the building, with the new bus loop, or the bus loop open again for school to start, the amount of traffic on that back loop is not as significant as it was last year. There would be the ability to probably pave that yet this year before the asphalt plants close in October timeframe.
From a building standpoint, this is Dan. I know that with that additional parking lot, we would not have the traffic. Obviously, the buses and the cars would not be going there, and staff are not parking around the building anymore. So we would have limited vehicular traffic back there as opposed to previous years.
Well, at some point, it's going to need to be done, because it just drove through there when I came here, and it's like, that is pretty rough back there, and just patching it's not going to, it might solve it a little bit, but if you're doing a nice addition, it would be nice to do the, do the whole thing, get it looking good. I can see waiting, but at some point it's got to be done.
So I have a question. So you said there was 125,000 in the budget, correct?
Correct.
And is that for that extra lot?
No, that is, right now, I have that earmarked in our budget as asphalt replacement allowance.
So what is the cost for the lot then?
The cost for the lot, the additional lot, is coming out of the operational referendum budget, completely separate from the $12 million.
So we couldn't flip-flop. Could we do this and then do the lot after, or not? Or is that not a possibility?
That's not a possibility because the two referenda questions are separate. So
Okay.
it's not legal to use the dollars from the operational for the capital or vice versa.
Okay, I just knew it was all asphalt. I wasn't sure if we could flip-flop the two or not.
So we're just roughly $50,000 short of the front of the building, correct?
Yes.
Being that, yeah, okay.
So then what have we got left in undesignated contingency right now? Roughly.
1 second. I had it written on a piece of paper and I didn't have it at my desk. I apologize. So, and this is based off of our board update from just over a week ago. We have $750,000 of contingency and allowances remaining, and that 125 is included in that number.
So to finish the blacktopping, you need 204,000 out of the contingency, correct?
Well,
More.
it would be that entire amount. Yes.
Entire 329 or the 204?
The 329 would get deducted from the $750,000 that we have as a balance of contingency and allowances remaining.
And like you said, other things could pop up that need that money.
That is a potential. Like I said, today was one that came up at about 1:30 today. We found out that some of the existing cast iron piping in the biology lab had actually rotted away below the ground. So we're in the process of investigating what it's going to take to run some new underground plumbing in that biology lab, and the dollars associated with that as well.
And we don't have to make a decision here tonight, correct?
We do not. Like I said, our sanitary line around the back of the building, the structures, the manholes out for that are on order, and they should be on site in roughly 2 weeks for them to start the project of getting that sanitary line around the back side of the building. And that's kind of when we had targeted or brought up that conversation of would we want to do a larger project or just do the patching. So I would say we would want to know one way or another, probably middle of July.
What would it be roughly if you finished the front north side and just patched the back? Being it would complete the front, it would make it look better when people come back to school. The back, maybe can wait.
So that back area, like Dr. Opper had mentioned, the patching for the sanitary line, we have that number, and that would be on top of the 177 for the removal and replacement of that front loop.
What would be just patching the back then?
I believe it was like $15,000 for that back area, just to patch where the sanitary trench is getting put in.
So
Okay,
would-
that doesn't include patching other areas. Like you showed a picture of a manhole that's got a big pothole next to it.
That
And,
does not.
Not, okay. But you wouldn't think that would be cost an arm and a leg to fix something like that? Patch it.
That could be pricey just for the deterioration that's there. I'm not sure what's underneath that is going to need to get corrected.
Okay.
And this number here, it's not going to be that expensive, but I'd say if we took a portion of that, if we're just going to go around and basically cut up some of the bad areas and patch, it wouldn't be all of that 150. We could probably get that down in the, I'm guessing 20 to 50 range, depending on what areas we said, yeah, this area has to go. But as we looked at some of those pictures, it's going to be a really difficult pick and choose what areas are worse than others. As you look, this area is not a great area, but that may be pulled up as part of that sanitary trench. But as you come around the corner of the building, this would be an area that would probably be high on the priority list. And as we get back around the corner, I know there's a bad area up here by this catch basin, but this corner, and when you start saw cutting asphalt like this, it could kind of create a domino effect on you that you have a good area of asphalt in this area, and then it starts to deteriorate faster around the edges. And that's not trying to push you in one direction or the other. I'm just trying to explain what I've seen in the past.
So would you suggest, Matt, in the short term, until the board decides, putting in the compacted gravel, knowing it'll be a little dusty, but not invest patching at $14,000, an area that you might decide in a month or two to dig up again and redo.
That I would agree. That is my recommendation, Dr. Opper, that we would want to have a better comfort level with our contingency. At $750,000, I am pretty comfortable that there's going to be money coming back to the district at the end of this project. I just, with some of the items still unknown and without a crystal ball in front of me, I could project all day and probably get pretty close. But I wouldn't want to put a guess at it right now as to what that number would be to say, yeah, let's pull the trigger right now. In late July, early August, I think I'd feel a lot better about that.
Then my suggestion is let's wait. That's my suggestion.
That'd be my opinion too.
Sorry. Are the buses going to be dropping off or picking up kids in the back of the building when school starts?
No, they would not.
Okay.
And to that point, the front loop in green is in much better shape than the area highlighted in pink around the back. This area along the east side of the building is probably in worse shape out of all of it.
Okay.
Because if you had enough contingency in middle of August, it doesn't take all that long to get the blacktopped. If we went that way.
No, it would just be a confirmation we can get on their schedule and get the asphalt removed, the base replaced, and get it paved. Like I said, in Wisconsin, you like to say that you're putting asphalt down until about deer season, but I always try to stay on the safe side and just say October.
It's going to be tight though, trying to squeeze it in this year, because in August, we also have numerous semis coming in to deliver all the fitness center equipment, all the furniture for the interior of the building that we've ordered. And we have to move back in. So if the driveways were inaccessible, it could also pose a challenge, which I think is why Matt was suggesting we might just backfill with compacted gravel and do the paving project next summer. Would be another option. You could try to hurry and get it done now, or you could plan to do it next summer and get on the schedule early next season.
Well, a lot of times when you dig stuff up, freezing and thawing, it's almost a good thing to delay it till the next season anyway, because it might settle, and you won't have perfect blacktop anyway.
There you go.
Okay, so the consensus is just to kind of wait for now and see where the chips fall as far as the contingency budget and revisit it at a later date. Is that correct?
Matt, do you want a motion that you don't want the board doesn't want to fill it with blacktop right now, that they just want to backfill with compacted stone? Or is the verbal conversation enough?
The verbal conversation is enough for me. As long as I understand the wishes of the board, we'll relay that to the contractors accordingly. Because the scope of work around the back of the building for the sanitary patching, that work has not been contracted or committed yet for the asphalt patch portion. So we'll just tell them, hey, we're holding off for right now, folks. We'll bring that gravel back up to the current elevation, and we'll move forward from there.
Perfect.
I know Carmen's on, but this is just a question as it pertains to snow plowing. And Matt, I'm not sure, does that have any bearing with the bladed trucks that will be doing any type of snow removal back there? Are there any concerns that we need to know about if we let it go compacted gravel over the wintertime?
Typically, their only concern is when they're plowing and the frost isn't in the ground yet. It can become a little bit more of a mess at that point. But typically, once the ground freezes, so you're going to have maybe one on a typical Wisconsin winter, you might have one snowfall in the fall and early winter that the ground's not frozen, and probably the same in the spring. That it just kind of causes a little bit of a mess, but for the most part, it's done quite regularly.
Okay.
All right, are we good on that one?
Yes.
All right, thank you, Matt, very much.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
All right, item B, review and endorse portions of the School District of Manawa School Reopening Plan. Dr. Opper, do you want to take these bullet point by bullet point?
Sure, and if you don't mind, since Matt is here and he had some contributions to the commencement conversation, if we could do that one first, that way we could let him go. So Dan and Matt, if you wanted to take that one.
Sure, I can go ahead and present my screen. Give me a second here.
While he's presenting his screen, the admin team met all of yesterday working on reopening plans, kind of establishing some basic assumptions based on the Department of Public Instruction guidance that just came out and the WIAA guidance for summer that came out last week, Thursday. So those were some of the bits of information that was used to put together what you're going to take a look at.
So I'll try to be concise, but certainly interrupt me if you have any questions along the way. The document that I'm going to be showing you now, can everyone see it? School District of Manawa Graduation Plan?
Yes.
We've basically put it into three scenarios. Obviously, based on the survey that was sent out to parents, we've identified July 25th as our graduation date, and we know that any plan that we are going to put forth does need to get approved by both yourself as well as Jed Woheat of Waupaca County Health Department, as well as our legal team and insurance liability carriers. So we've identified three potential scenarios where memorable and safe opportunity for our seniors to experience graduation. The first scenario was by far the most popular, and it was scenario number one, in-person live on the football field, the MAC. And the rain option, because being Wisconsin, we can never know, would be in-person live in the Manawa Elementary School gym. Scenario two would be a scheduled in-person queue drive-up option. And one of the reasons Matt is on is we haven't yet solidified what that location would be because we wanted to have your input, whether it would be the Manawa Elementary School or the high school parking lot. And scenario three would be a scheduled in-person queue by appointment. And these kind of are in rank order. Scenario one is our first choice for graduation scenarios because that's what the public wanted, as well as our seniors. As you can see, it's scheduled for July 25th at 11 a.m. at the football field. The band and choir is not going to be performing, and we are going to be preparing according to the DPI, CDC, and Waupaca County DHS guidelines with all of these scenarios with 6-foot distancing and or masks. I've been in touch with Police Chief Gorman, and he's indicated that he will provide staffing as needed to assist in supervising the event. So the specifics of the in-person live on the football field, anticipated attendance breakdown, we know we have 50 students, and we have earmarked 200 guests, 400 guests, 4 guests, per graduate, and then also an allocation for Manawa administration and Board of Education. Total attendees would be 300. At full capacity, the 7 sections of bleachers would comfortably hold 800 guests, but with the proper physical distancing, about 200 guests can fit comfortably on the bleachers. I've been down to Lindsay Park to measure the ones that will be brought up to augment our 3 sections of seating up there. They're a little bit indifferent in style. The ones we have now have a center railing, while the ones down at Lindsay Park are contiguous and don't have a center aisle. So I've gone through and I've measured every set of bleachers and tried to anticipate in every scenario that 4 persons would approximately take up 6 feet in linear space, and then creating a 6-foot loop or circle around them. We would have to go up usually 3 levels before we could seat another section of 4, and then obviously to the right and the left, another section of 4. So I've done that in both the Lindsay Park bleachers, our bleachers, as well as the Manawa Elementary School gymnasium bleachers, all of which have a little bit different seating arrangement to maximize capacity. My plan in all of these, the only piece that is not included in the presentation tonight is, as we were discussing the family situations that we know we have with all parents in all schools, is that we may have 2 sets of parents that may not want to sit together. And quite frankly, based off of CDC guidelines, if they're from a different household, they should not be seated together because they do need to maintain that 6-foot distancing. So I do have a letter that I'm in the midst of composing, trying to retrieve some information from the graduate families on how many tickets they would require, as far as if they're allowed a maximum of 4 tickets. How many would they use? The second question would be, do you require any handicapped accessible seating or floor seating due to a family member with limited mobility? And if so, how many seats? And then please let us know if your allocation of tickets will need to be divided due to extended family and therefore would need to be seated separately. Each one of those would have a multiplier effect and have an impact on our seating and how we would arrange that. So it's kind of planning for multiple scenarios, multiple situations, but I do need a little bit more data from our families. And hopefully that letter would be going out next week. The board certainly needed to see what we were looking at for opportunities. So moving forward with the first scenario, again, the general expectations for staff, students, and guests was that all students are looking to fill out the COVID screening form, staying at home if they answer yes to any of the questions. Movement from the parking lot to the bleachers would follow a prescribed route. No persons inside the building. We're going to practice physical distancing. We're going to wear a mask when we can't be 6 feet apart. That's encouraged. It's not mandatory, knowing our populace. The seating for the guests in the bleachers wouldn't be in 6-foot increments. Senior citizens, senior chairs would be placed 6 feet apart. I'll show you the diagram. They are tentatively slated to be on the track. And families would check at the entrance to the football field with the name of the graduate and their limit of 4 persons. We are looking at having to issue wrist ticks, so that way when they come to present, the name of the graduate would be worn on their wrist. If they don't have a wrist tick, no admission, because we do have limited amounts of seating. The graduation ceremony procedures, the students would be, sorry.
And would you want to share, how is it determined who sits where on the bleachers? So let's say my foursome comes as a unit, how would that happen?
We'd be looking at, in the past, the summa cum laude graduates would be allowed the first choice of seating, and it would be my intent to seat them based off of their needs of handicapped or floor seating for mobility, closest to the center of the graduation stage, and then fanning out from there. So we are soliciting their individual needs and then trying to place them in the most preferred spot. I used to do all of the seating for the musicals at the high school in Wapaka, and I can do this. I don't know that I want to give them a seating chart and let them pick. I think I would just try to prefer and optimally seat them to the center for the best view and then fan out from the 50-yard line, as it were.
So in other words, when people arrive, ushers, which will probably be some of our staff, will take them to their pre-assigned seating that you've already designated.
That's correct. And we could do it by color coding, that here's the Jones family. They're allocated in this section in the bleachers, taped off, and that's where they would be escorted to and be seated. The diagram, as you can see, this would be for the outside setting. The graduation stage in discussion we thought would best be placed right off of the edge of the track. So in other words, the track is running right here where Board of Education and Administration would be seated, 2 rows of graduates of 25 each with 6-foot distancing, and then any staff that would be interested in attending. That's usually been in a traditional ceremony between 10 to 20 staff members. I don't know what to anticipate yet. I haven't solicited that information from staff. In front of the bleachers, this would be the fence. And the reason we liked doing it this way is that if we put the graduation stage any further out on the football field, it'd be that much further away from the people that want to be able to view this. Additionally, with girls with high heels, if they were to walk out on the football field, we know that we've got puncture issues into the turf and the sod. We're just getting the football field redone, and we didn't want to have any ankle twisting going on with the ladies if they're wearing high-heeled shoes. So in front of the area for the main portion of seating, we could do lawn chair and handicapped accessible seating in 6-foot distancing for those people that have mobility issues or wheelchair access. And the rest of everyone else would be in 6-foot distancing designated with tape with the family pods. The rain option, in-person live in the MES gym, would be the same date, the same time, the same type of 6-foot distancing rules, but we would be looking at a reduction in overall attendance. It was my goal that we would not be in a situation that, okay, we're outside and you get to have 6 or 8 guests, and then at the last minute we have a rain situation and now 4 people can't come. So I've done my best to keep the guest list for our seniors to 4 guests per person. The caveat with that is that it would be essential staff only. We wouldn't be able to seat staff inside the gymnasium. They could, if they wanted to attend, they might be able to be out in the commons area. And then again, limited Board of Education participation. So I would want to know who is planning on attending. The reason being, and you are all very important, but 7 times 6 and it is 42 square feet that I have to allocate if you all have to be seated and at 6-foot distancing measures. So my goal was to try to have family of the graduates first. So we do have a reduction in total attendees. And again, whether or not they would be needed to be on the floor or in the bleachers, I've accounted for in our diagram here. The stage would be on the far side of the gymnasium. I've anticipated 132 people at 6-foot distancing measures in 4-person pods would fit on the left side of the gym. The 2 sections we have here, we'd be able to fit 16 persons in 4-person pods, 16 persons in 4-person pods, and then floor seating for some family members and handicapped accessible. The seating for the graduates, 50 of them at 6-foot distancing, would be a little bit more than half of the gym, just spilling over by about 3 to 4 feet from the mid-court line. That's the kind of distance we would need for our 6-foot jet for all of our graduates. they would approximately be in 6 or 7 rows of 8 students each. So scenario 2 is the scheduled in-person queue drive-up option. I need to change, sorry, that is scenario 2. Excuse my typo. This is where we would be dealing with a potential spike. And if our COVID options forced us to be able to have to curtail an in-person event, we would look to do a drive-up graduation ceremony that could either be located in the Manawa Elementary School or the high school parking lot. Now, this is why Matt is on yet, is that certainly it's contagious the way the driveway is set up at the elementary school for students to be able to drive up, line them up, hand them their diploma, and have them exit in a pretty orderly fashion. If we were to do it at the high school, we could either do it in the parking lot, but I've been told today that we might have some other options. So I don't know if that's where I hand the mic to what possibilities exist.
So the couple areas that we're kind of looking at, and I know the one we originally talked about was bringing them around that entire loop around the back of the building and either doing the pickup at the football field or pick up at the parking lot on the west side of the high school. One item that I talked with Dr. Opper today is shuffle some things around, fencing, trailers, some of the containers, and potentially do it in the front of the building as well. So I think there's options at the high school, just as long as everybody has their understanding hat on that things are not going to be 100% done. Things are not going to be looking perfect. Like we just talked about with that loop around the back of the building. If we do decide, or if the board does decide to maintain that gravel, it will not be a paved surface they'll be driving on. So I think there's options at the high school. It's just what level of finished it will actually be. We're pushing to get as much stuff completed and done as possible, and get contractors trailers and storage containers off the job site. As you come around the back of the building, some of those containers are actually curriculum and equipment for the school or the district. So those items are not going to move. But items that aren't as fixed, the dumpsters, job trailers, things of that nature, those can kind of be shuffled around a little bit as need be. And that's pretty typical for a graduation ceremony. A little bit more typical in the month of May than the month of July, but we're dealing with what we have.
Thanks, Matt. So I know that our seniors would prefer to probably receive their diploma on the soil of the school that they're graduating from, but it does cause, some additional challenges. It'd be easier at the elementary school because it's kind of set up for that drive-through process. I wasn't about to make that decision without having some consultation with the board. Let me finish our final possibility, and it's the least desirable of all of them, and quite frankly might be the most labor intensive, is scenario 3, a scheduled in-person queue by appointment in the elementary school, and that's if we had to go to a completely virtual ceremony. That experience would need to be by appointment, and students would receive their diplomas. We've got a tentative date scheduled between July 20th and the 22nd, and we would record those students basically they'd come into the elementary school by appointment, they'd be escorted into the gym, they would follow a prescribed path to get there. Once in there, they would have approximately 15 minutes to be able to walk in. We would record them walking across the stage, have a few moments for a photo opportunity, and then they would be escorted from the building in a prescribed path at the end of the ceremony. We would then, Mr. Covarrubias would take probably 2 full days, and when I spoke with him today, this would have to be a dedicated effort on his part to then edit all of the 50 seniors walking across stage. We already have the 3 senior speeches recorded in the event that we need to go this route, and then splice this all together, try to make it as pretty as we can, edit it, and then put it up on YouTube on July 25th at the graduation time of 11 o'clock, and people would be able to view it, or eventually, Bryant, I believe they would be able to record it as well.
Yes, so the idea is it would be online, yeah.
So there are all kinds of specifics that we would adhere to with the 6-foot social distancing. Diploma jackets would probably have to be set down on a table, and where they would retrieve it at that time. Staff would be masked. We would have some photograph issues because we may have to look at contracting maybe a private photographer to be able to take a photograph, because I have not been in touch with Network yet on this scenario, to be able to be present on multiple days for multiple hours to be able to take those pictures. So when I talked to the Marion principal, he said that they contracted somebody within their town locally. I know, Mr. Seeger, I happen to know that you know a photographer that's pretty well versed with the school that might be able to be contacted to possibly tap into. So that's something that we could investigate.
Yeah, sure, she would.
So I guess it's a matter of all of these scenarios need to be approved by you, the DH or Wapaka County, our legal and our insurance carriers. So I'm looking for some direction on scenario number 2. If we needed to be able to, if we had to go the delivery route, would it be the high school or would it be the elementary school?
My opinion, Bruce Scheller, on that one would be the high school. I've actually been approached by several students already that said they would much prefer the high school, not the elementary school.
I would concur as well, Mr. Wolfgram. Additionally, I do have a question. In all of these scenarios, considering the fact that we are talking about limiting guests, which of course is new for us, and it's not happened ever before, are we going to record the graduation ceremony regardless of the method so that it can be shared with family members?
Yes, in all these scenarios, it is going to be recorded. We know that our connectivity issues out on the football field, if that were our scenario, is limited. So we would record and then post later, would be able to be downloaded. Certainly in the elementary school gym, we haven't explored live streaming that, but I think, Bryant, you would also advocate recording it and posting, or what are your thoughts on a live stream from the elementary school?
I would still suggest recording it, only because I would hate to set the expectation that it would be streamable and then something happens and then we disappoint people. I feel a lot more confident about setting the expectation that it would be available X number of hours later, just to ensure that we meet expectations. But regardless, I think it'd be good to have this posted online just for people to have in general.
So if you like the high school driveway option as driveways go, knowing that's not the preferred, but originally it was kind of the concept of like circling the building, coming in the west driveway, going around the perimeter of the building, and exiting out the east driveway. We know now the back driveway, it might be compacted gravel, It's in tough shape. It could be dusty. Would you want Matt to make every effort to try to clear the front of the building and use the front loop instead?
Well, for me, you already have a nice, as I see that the sidewalk is in front of the fitness center is already cemented. So actually by then, the fitness center probably looked pretty nice. So loop around the parking lot, even if you want to go out, then go east as you exit, loop around the parking lot in front of the new gym or new fitness center, and then hang a right, go east if you want to do that, or back out. Either way, it's gonna look, I think it looks pretty decent by then.
That's not a bad suggestion.
It would showcase that newly completed fitness center. It is a pretty impressive looking addition.
The other piece that Melanie and I were talking about today, if we did do a drive-up ceremony, she asked if would it be my intent to have the parking lot available for spectators, and that's probably a double-edged sword. My initial thought is yes, to allow people, but then we have some traffic concerns. We've got some supervision issues as far as people getting out of their vehicles. If we're at that point where we're just handing the diploma to them through the vehicle window, we then now have a whole supervision issue of the parking lot to try to control behaviors in the parking lot. Does anybody have any opinion on that?
I agree with you. I think you're opening that up for a can of worms to open up there. I mean, if you're handing them out through the window, I think you just drive in and drive out, like you said, and otherwise you're going to have problems, I believe, because people aren't going to listen.
Right. We know that our electorate has very mixed views on social distancing, and it's my hope that everybody would abide, even if we're live in the football field, to maintain proper distancing and etiquette. But it's hard to control. The more numbers we have, it's hard to control those types of things. Okay. I like the idea of the fitness center. If I'm hearing the few voices that have spoke up, we do a loop around the parking lot, and the diploma would be handed in through the window in front of the fitness center, and we don't have to worry about movement of all of the equipment in front of the school.
If that's wise with everybody.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
I agree.
Other questions you have about any of the scenarios?
I think you've done put a lot of thought and effort into it, so I do thank you for that.
Thank you. It's been very challenging with a target and shifting sand. And of course, we want to demonstrate every effort possible to try to make our families and our graduates happy, because we know this is nothing that anybody anticipated, but we're going to do our best to make as many people happy as possible. So that letter that I was talking about, I'm going to continue to work on that tomorrow. I'd probably like to have Dr. Roper eyes on it as well, and so we can gather the correct amount of information and go from there. Because as I said, every seating change that happens will have an impact on the 6-foot distancing. So if I have only one family that needs to be split up, then I need to account for that. If I have 10 families with 4 handicap, that shifts, and I need to prepare for outside as well as inside for a rain situation. So this we'll continue to plan as we have more information coming from our graduates. Melanie,
So what Jack said today was, we just want to put the caveat on it that while number one is the preferred and that's the direction you're putting a lot of energy into, he suggested that at the bottom of each plan, it just indicates that there's they're subject to change.
Okay.
And we won't, the challenge we encounter sometimes, the reason Dan put so much energy on the front end of this is we don't always have a lot of notice, kind of like what happened in March. In that instance, thank heavens, we had a few days to prepare. You know, we learned that we'd be closing, you know, on a Friday, and we had the weekend to get ready. But we don't always know how much advance notice we're going to receive. So he's put a lot of energy into every possible avenue, just to ensure that he is ready to provide a really nice commencement ceremony, no matter what life throws at him. Let's put it that way.
My hope is that they will be understanding due to having to social distance, that even if we were in the Little Wolf High School gym, we would still have to social distance, and we would be looking at limiting in some way, shape, or form who was able to attend. So I think that's my biggest concern. Hopefully people will understand what we're bound by. Okay. Then I'll continue to move forward and plan and work with all my stakeholders. Thanks to Mr. Covarrubias, Mr. Rowan, who has also been integral in helping out, because we're going to be using his sound system outside, as well as in the elementary school gym, as well as he's helping out with a lot of the platforms with recording, Bryant with editing, Mrs. Kane with programming. So there's a lot of people with hands in the pot. I couldn't do it without their assistance. So thank you to all of them.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wolfram. Did you want to go ahead, Dr. Upper, then and move back up on the list for summer weightlifting and skill drill activities?
You bet. I'll wait until Dan relinquishes the screen there for a moment. It's always a second of lag time in that process. All righty. So Mr. Keller and Ms. Eck have been working very hard. Their plans have already gone to our attorney. I haven't gotten we talked today. He was going to try to review them this afternoon. I haven't gotten a reply as yet. Jed already looked at them, and he felt that we had done everything that the WIAA protocols asked as of last Thursday. We did add just last Thursday the whistle. No whistles are allowed. Coach Johnson did let me know that he was able to get a Thrive-In grant for that alternative. It looks like a whistle, it sounds like a whistle, but you don't blow into it, so you're not putting any particulates into the air. So he was able to acquire those. Our physical education teachers already use something like that. So these plans should be ready to go out to parents very soon, as long as you don't have any concerns about them. We refinished the gym floor early to ensure that that wouldn't conflict with any of the plans coming up. Dan did note that we do have the girls basketball. That would be Coach Collins. You've already talked to Coach Collins. If it looked like it might be rainy on the day of graduation, that Coach Collins was able to flex a little bit with the girls' basketball skill drill experience. I can't see Dan, but I'm thinking I'm recalling that correctly.
You are correct. I spoke with Ms. Eck today, and in the event that we also have to go to our last scenario in graduation, and we have to do recordings the 20th to the 22nd, Ms. Eck is also informing him that we'll need some flexibility based off of.
Thank you very much. So for each one of these activities, the cohorts are going to be group sizes of 10 athletes, student athletes, at any one given time with an adult. And they're going to do individualized activities for the most part because of touching things. There's a lot of talk about the need for the two-step cleaning. So it's cleaning and then disinfecting. So they're suggesting, for example, with volleyballs or basketballs, that each person only touch one ball. So the coaches need to get creative in terms of thinking about what kinds of drills and activities can you do that minimizes multiple people touching items, because then those items all need to be put out of circulation, sanitized before the next group comes in. So they've also timed things out between activities so that they have time to sanitize before the next group enters. They've gotten really creative about their ideas. We're also closing things like bubblers. If you visited the elementary recently, you'll notice that it's already, Mr. Keller went around and taped off the travel patterns so that there's painter's tape on the floor showing the direction to come in and one-way traffic flow. And then he used our Alice training caution tape to kind of section off the area so you're kind of channeled in the direction you need to go. That minimizes people crossing paths. Those coming and those going will be going in different routes. I think they've been very thorough in their planning. So a lot of 6-foot distancing. The state did provide 1,500 masks. They're the cloth, washable, reusable masks, and 3 touchless thermometers. We had already purchased 4 of our own, so we now own 7 of those. So if a student would want a mask or the parent prefers that they use one, those are available free, available to anybody who wants it to use. We'll collect them back and take care of the washing. We have the washer and dryer set up, so parents don't have to take on that added responsibility. And the student would be provided a clean one each day if they want it. But the coaches / teachers understand that if people or parents prefer that students not wear masks, then the activities have to be planned that people are 6 feet apart. Most of the time, coaches or teachers are going to be wearing the masks so that they can approach and provide support and safety and good oversight. The bubblers have already been covered, so we'll be just using the water bottle fillers that we have in both schools. Staff are responsible for keeping the daily attendance and checking the COVID screening record. And then we are mandated reporters. If someone either became ill while they were in our activity or in the screening process in the morning, identified as not feeling well, we do need to report to DHS, and then they take care of contact tracing and communicating with anybody that might need to be communicated with. We've been reminded on several occasions that because of HIPAA, Those are the health privacy laws that we can neither affirm or deny if anyone has COVID-19. So while we may be aware that someone has it and certain activities might be closed or restricted if we were to find out that someone in one of these cohort groups is ill, we can't confirm or deny anything about that because that would be in violation of HIPAA laws. So I think a lot of it is just good health and safety practices for many of the other parts, making sure we have enough hand sanitizer, disinfectant products. Carmen is already purchasing or has purchased those items and has them in stock in the building. So any questions related to those? Otherwise, Mr. Keller and Ms. Eck would like to get the advertising out because these activities begin as early as July 1. So we'd need, they would like your formal approval to proceed if someone would be willing to do so, or to comment if there's something you need them to adjust.
Just out of curiosity, I mean, I would presume that we're probably going to need to make a formal motion on all of these items, correct?
Yes.
So do we want to make one lump motion at the end to do so, or would you prefer to tackle them item by item? Because we certainly didn't take any formal action on commencement either.
I'll leave that to your discretion if you want to name each one separately or if you want to just approve. The other letters were just to see if you had any questions. I know I'd sent out communications on the guidance that we received. The reopening committee, yeah, it's up to you.
Do you have a preference as to how we go about proceeding?
No, I think it's up to you.
Then I will suggest that we just make a lump motion at the completion of it and do endorsement of all the steps.
Sounds great. So we have the DPI and WIAA guidance. Were there any questions that you had? I'm not sure I can do interpretations of any of those documents, but if you had specific questions, I certainly can contact people in either organization and get more information. All right, the district reopening, district-wide reopening committee is meeting on Monday night. I haven't sent out the formal invitation yet, but we have quite a few volunteers to participate and get some feedback from them. We're doing well with our survey. Now I'm wondering if I can get to the right, here we go, get to the right screen quickly here. So for really only the second day of our survey from School Perceptions, we've already received 116 replies. So given the number of families in the district, it being, you know, somewhere over 650, that's a pretty good return rate on just day 2. So we know we're getting a high level of engagement. We're definitely seeing that most parents are planning to send their students back here in the fall. Yes is at 103 or 90, a little over 90%. Overall, fairly mixed feedback on, oh goodness, I was hoping that wouldn't happen. Transportation, it's looking like about a third would use the bus, a third would transport their own child, and a third have high school age drivers who would help get their children to school. And technology overall, the response was fairly good, that they had the technology they needed. In terms of devices, more often or not, the comments were around connectivity were an issue, especially if they had multiple users in the household. So we'll get some valuable feedback on that from Mr. Covarrubias. These surveys are not anonymous. So Mr. Covarrubias will know who's having technology difficulties, who's having connectivity issues, and can contact and address their needs specifically. So this survey is a little different than some we've done. Most of them in the past have all been anonymous. These are specifically not, because we can't help people if we don't know who needs the help. So overall, coming in pretty good. In our meetings yesterday, we talked about software platforms that work well for the young child, and there's a very popular program called Seesaw that we're looking at for the primary age kids. For the rest of the students, it would be the use of Google. And Bryant, a little bit later, is going to be talking with you about changing his technology purchases, shifting slightly to ensure that the devices that he needs for children are the priority in his budget, which might mean putting off some other items that we might be able to do from another avenue. So I'll pause there and see if you have any questions. The only other question, and it might be important before you go into the motion, is to what degree are you comfortable with allowing administration to change, adapt the plans without a board meeting? Or maybe the flip of that is, if I called you in COVID, we can give a 1 hour notice. If we have a situation and we need to change our plans, do you want to convene an emergency meeting potentially in an hour from the time I contact you? I know most of you are, not going to be available till the evening, but that might be calling you at 4 o'clock for a 5 o'clock meeting or a 6 o'clock meeting.
Can I add something to this, Dr. Hopper?
Mm-hmm.
So what we're asking for is a lot of the plans that we put in front of you was to purchase certain items, but based on the information we're getting from the state and federal government, that's rapidly changing. Is our admin team is having discussions that are saying, instead of purchasing touchscreens for certain locations, we're thinking.
Oh, Bryant, we're not on purchasing yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will wait till my turn. Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're on decision making. So when you look at the 3 scenarios tonight for graduation, are you comfortable that Dan announces, based on DHS, legal counsel, and the liability insurance carrier, as we get closer, which one we're going to be doing? Or do you want to convene a meeting just before that to affirm the selection?
I think that you guys have been doing a great job of watching what's going on. I don't think that I would need an emergency meeting. I think you guys are doing well. Notification of us to us, I believe, is adequate. I'm not sure what anybody else thinks, but that's my thought.
Thank you for the kind words, Bobby Joe. Much appreciated. I know Dan appreciates it greatly too, because he has spent tremendous hours on this and he's not done yet.
Oh, no, it's just the beginning.
I mean, because I work in the healthcare field. I mean, we watch the CDC. I mean, we're on that daily. So, I mean, I totally understand what you guys are, looking at. You guys are DPI and the CDC.
I guess this is Russ. I'd agree with Bobby. I think you've made some good decisions so far, and I would trust you would continue to do it that way. And I think just the notification, like she said, fits for me too.
I mean, also the notification would be fine. But we're not discussing like if you're doing how you're doing school yet, correct? Or like a 4-day week or any of that stuff. We're not really discussing that, correct?
That plan isn't ready yet. That committee meets for the first time on Monday evening. So we'll put some ideas in front of them and see how they're feeling. We'll also have a lot more survey information by then, which will give us a sense beyond the committee of what the broader community is thinking. So I'm hoping to have that to you for at the very latest, the regular July meeting, but we may want to call one more special meeting earlier in July to get that approved so parents know what's coming.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Forbes, any thoughts, or Mr. Seeger, any thoughts?
I agree with Russ and Bobby Joe and Bruce. The administration has been doing a fine job. Notifying would be nice at the very end.
Yeah, I agree also. They're going to do what's best for the kids and try and get the best results out of anything. So I'm good with it.
And I will also give my endorsement. I understand how fluid this situation is at all times. And I think that demanding that we have to call a meeting in order to have you proceed with something that requires an hour's notice isn't prudent of us. So I also lend that endorsement as well. So that, I think, leaves us to the end of our list. So I would be looking for a motion then at this point for someone to review and endorse that reopening plan. Again, because we are virtual and we do have telephone attendees, when making that motion, if you would please state your name prior to doing so.
Well, Russ Johnson here. I'd like to make a motion that we approve and endorse the items we just spoke about. I don't have it in front of me right now, but let's see here. The endorsement of the portions of the reopening plan.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Johnson. Do I have a second? Dr. Opper, would you like us to specifically name each of those items out?
It would be helpful to do letters.
Okay.
Numerals 1 and 2, and then if you would include the caveat about administrative flexibility to respond to evolving situations, that you're authorizing us to do that.
Okay. I make a motion. Russ Johnson. I'll make a motion that we approve the reopening plan A, B, C, D, and E, and also that the administration has our approval to move as needed as circumstances change.
I have a motion by Mr. Johnson. Do I have a second?
Bruce
Mrs.
Scheller,
Petke,
second.
Mrs. Petke beat you to it, Mr. Scheller. Discussion. Okay, hearing none, we will proceed by a roll call vote. Mr. Forbes,
Aye.
Mr. Scheller,
Aye.
Mr. Seeger,
Aye.
Mrs. Petke,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
and Mrs. Johnson is an aye as well. Motion carries by a roll call vote. Item C, consider authorizing administration to expend CARES Act funding.
We are receiving $89,177. And I'm hoping that on the screen you can see the anticipated purchasing spreadsheet. So you'll see we're already kind of approaching our total there. These are federal dollars based on the Title I aid formula. So that's our allocation of those federal funds. And I believe this is where Bryant wanted to talk about offering him the flexibility to change his direction a little bit on instructional technology.
Thank you, Dr. Opper. The first few lines of this spreadsheet are the things that has already been approved by the board for the IT server purchases. As we're having conversations as an admin team around the new guidelines that are coming out that are still evolving, we're deciding that our needs are shifting with those guidelines. So, for example, we're talking about getting less of those Promethean screens that are on that board and getting more devices for students, as well as since the guidelines are going to restrict our ability to use our computer lab at the elementary school, it makes a lot of sense to just not replace that this year and to delay that. So based on that, we want to make some sensical shifts in what we're purchasing to match the guidelines. Additionally, as Dr. Opper said, there's more CARES money that's coming in. So the amount that we're going to be able to spend on technology is going to change. So if we change things around, it's over that $9,000 cap. So per board policy, we need to get your approval to make those sort of purchases. As we shift things around, we wanted to ask you for the flexibility to make those changes without having to call an emergency meeting. I believe is the procedure that Dr. Opper is trying to follow.
And that's what this spreadsheet represents. So you can see the kinds of items that that we're looking at. We ordered for the district office and elementary office the plexiglass shields that we think are going to work well. We didn't order for the rest of the district. We thought we'd try the sample, make sure we're pleased with them before we go ahead and order the rest. We already own the touchless thermometers. We just need the dollar figure entered into the spreadsheet. But you can see that $89,000 doesn't go very far. So I thought it was also important for you to just, reflect. It sounds like we're getting these huge amounts of money and it's going to cover a lot of expenses, but when you look at how quickly the money goes, this doesn't account for if we had to make any adjustments in transportation to get students to school, or any of those kinds of things, which can also be extremely expensive.
All right, so we would be looking for a motion then for authorization.
Authorizing the administrative team to expend the CARES Act funding.
Bruce Scheller, I'd like to make a motion to consider authorizing administration to expand CARES Act funding.
I have a motion by Mr. Scheller. Do I have a second?
Stan Forbes, second.
Second by Mr. Forbes. Any discussion? Hearing none, once again by roll call vote. Mr. Forbes,
Aye.
Mr. Scheller,
Aye.
Mr. Seeger,
Aye.
Mrs. Petke,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
And it is an aye from Mrs. Johnson as well. Motion carries on a roll call vote. Item D, consider revision of the school year 2021 instructional technology purchasing plan.
So you approved the purchasing plan at the regular meeting this month. And Bryant is asking to change that, be able to change the order and focus on different items as he described. So not outfitting the elementary computer lab with new Chromeboxes, and instead doing individual devices for students that they would be able to, we would have more capability to provide one-to-one devices.
Yeah, so as Dr. making sure I'm not on mute here. As Dr. Upper said, yeah, kind of parallel to what we just said earlier, things are shifting, our needs are shifting, so we're trying to make sure we put the money where we actually need it and not spend something on devices that we may not need in this next year.
I'll take a shot at it again if we're looking for a motion.
Yeah.
Russ here. I'd like to make a motion that we allow administration and Bryant to make adjustments to the needs of the equipment needed as it presents itself.
I have a motion by Mr. Johnson. Do I have a second?
Mrs. Petke, second.
Second by Mrs. Petke. Any discussion? Hearing none, again by a roll call vote. Mr. Forbes,
Aye.
Mr. Scheller,
Aye.
Mr. Seeger,
Aye.
Mrs. Petke,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
and it is an aye from Mrs. Johnson as well. Motion carries by a roll call vote. Consider district equity statement.
So the draft is currently on the screen now. And this would be a statement just coming from the school district of Manawa. It would be something that we would publish on the district website. And in blue are 3 different documents from the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction website. So those blue are actually live links to documents at the state level. I did invite other officials to participate with us, and either I didn't hear from them or they've declined at this time.
Does anyone have any questions, comments, thoughts? Otherwise, we would be looking for a motion.
Or edits. If you see anything you'd like to have rephrased, that would be perfectly great.
So when you say decline, is that like our, because I think what I read was you checked with Chief Gorman, Mayor Smith, and I don't remember who else.
Mm-hmm. In some communities, the different organizations banded together and put out a common statement. I think I sent you the one from the Appleton Area School District, made a joint community statement. So,
Does anyone have any edits or any concerns?
No concern. I like the part where conversations that take place at home are an important element in creating both a school and community culture where all people are treated with dignity and respect. I really like that sentence in there a lot. So,
it's really good when families have those conversations with, especially with young children during those formative years, that it has a huge influence.
Would someone care to make a motion?
Bruce Scheller, I'd like to make a motion to approve the district equity statement.
I have a motion by Mr. Scheller. Do we have a second?
Stan Forbes, second.
Second by Mr. Forbes. Any discussion? Hearing none, once again by a roll call vote. Mr. Forbes,
Aye.
Mr. Scheller,
Aye.
Mr. Seeger,
Aye.
Mrs. Petke,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
and it is an aye from Mrs. Johnson as well. Motion carries by a roll call vote. Next meeting dates, July 7th, we have an ad hoc recognition committee at 5 o'clock. That will be a hybrid meeting with it being held in the library as well as being held virtually at 5 o'clock. July 7th, also Policy and Human Resources following at 6 o'clock, same criteria. July 8th is Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting, 5 o'clock site tour, and then it's going to be library and virtual. July 8th is Curriculum Committee at 7 o'clock. July 9th is Finance Committee at 5:30. July 25th, 2020 class of commencement ceremony at 11 o'clock. Location pending what happens. And July 27th is going to be our regular board meeting at 7 o'clock. So just a reminder again that starting in July, our meetings will be held both in person and virtually for those that wish to choose in that manner. We are looking for a motion to adjourn into closed session so that we may discuss the employment of staff over which we have jurisdiction.
I make a motion to adjourn into closed session.
I have a motion by Mrs. Petke. Do I have a second?
Second, Mr. Scheller.
Second by Mr. Scheller. Any discussion? Again, by a roll call vote. Mr. Forbes?
Aye.
Mr. Scheller?
Aye.
Mr. Seeger?
Aye.
Mrs. Petke?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
I think he said it right before
Aye.
we muted him.
Aye. Sorry.
There's an aye from Mrs. Johnson as well. Motion carries by a roll call vote. As a reminder, you would want to follow that second link in your calendars in order to join that meeting, and we will do so immediately. Time is 8:25, Mrs. Petke.
Got it. Thank you.
Have a good night, guys.
Thank you. Would you end the recording, Mr. Koberu?
Thank you for reminding me.